My husband leaned across the kitchen counter, grinning like he'd just solved world peace, and said the one sentence no wife ever expects to hear at Christmas. My ex is coming to Christmas dinner with us. He had no idea what was coming next. Asterisk, before we dive into the wild drama of this true emotional, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on post notifications, and smash the like button. It helps the channel more than you know, and it makes sure you never miss another story that'll have you yelling at your screen. My ex is coming to Christmas dinner with us. I swear, the way he said it, you would have thought he was announcing that Santa himself was about to land on our roof with a sack full of tax refunds. My husband, Evan, stood there holding a grocery bag of peppermint mocha creamers and sugar cookies, his eyes bright, his voice weirdly cheerful. And me, I froze with the dish towel still in my hand, staring at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. What? I asked slowly. My ex, he repeated, still grinning. Sarah, you remember me telling you about her? I remembered, or rather, I remembered what he didn't tell me. See, there are two types of men. The ones who say, yeah, my ex and I dated for a bit, and the ones who say, we dated, but conveniently skip over the fact that they lived together, shared a dog, and almost got engaged. Guess which type my husband was. Not the honest one. He set the grocery bag down like we were about to bake cookies and watch Christmas movies together. Meanwhile, my heart had slid down into my stomach. She's alone this year, he continued. Her family's overseas, and she said she'd love to see us. I told her you wouldn't mind. He said it so casually, so comfortably, so confidently. Like the decision didn't involve me, like inviting your ex to Christmas dinner was a normal married people activity, like it wasn't something that required, at minimum, a conversation. I swallowed hard. What day is she coming? Oh, Christmas Eve dinner, and maybe Christmas Day brunch, depending on how plans go. I blinked. She was staying for 2 meals. And where is she staying? I asked, hoping to God the answer wasn't what I feared. Here, he said, smiling. In the guest room. It'll be fun. Just like old times. Old times. That phrase felt like a shard of ice sliding down my spine. But here's the thing. My husband had no idea. No idea what I knew. No idea what I'd already seen. No idea about the message I found on his old iPad 2 weeks earlier. A message from her, time-stamped only a month ago. And the message wasn't just friendly. It read, I miss you too. And my husband had replied, I think about you more than you know. It hit me like a punch the first time I saw it, not because I was shocked that people reconnect with exes they do, but because of the way he told me he barely talks to her, the way he minimized everything, the way he insisted she didn't matter, that the past was the past. He didn't know I knew, and he definitely didn't know what I had planned. Because when a husband invites his ex to Christmas dinner while telling her he misses her and lying to the woman he shares a life with, you don't confront him immediately. You don't blow up. You don't scream. You watch. You observe. You collect the truth like snow in a storm. And then you let the consequences come to him like a wrapped present he never saw coming. Evan walked over and kissed my cheek, oblivious. I knew you'd be okay with it, he said warmly. You're so understanding. Understanding, right? I smiled, not because I was calm, but because the truth was already lined up like dominoes behind him. When exactly did you talk to her? I asked casually. Oh, a few weeks ago, he said. We just reconnected a bit, nothing big. My heart thumped. Lie. I knew the exact dates. Yeah, I answered with a slow nod. Nothing big. He didn't notice the way my fingers tightened around the dish towel. He didn't notice the shift in my voice. He didn't notice the storm gathering right behind my eyes. Anyway, he said, let's make this Christmas special. Oh, it would be special, just not the way he imagined, because when Sarah walked through our front door on Christmas Eve, everything he tried so hard to keep hidden would crash into the open like an avalanche, and I was done playing the understanding wife. Christmas was about to turn into Judgment Day. 3 days before Christmas Eve, I stood in the middle of our living room, staring at the space I had spent all week preparing for our guest. Evan thought I was being generous, thoughtful, hospitable, but every ornament I hung, every pillow I fluffed, every cinnamon candle I lit, was done with the kind of composure a woman has when she's already reached a decision, not a petty one, not a jealous one, a decisive one. Because when trust starts to rot, you don't put frosting on it, you don't decorate over the damage, you search for the source. And I had found mine. That old iPad, the one Evan used to swear he'd reset and wiped clean, was sitting inside my nightstand, I had opened it 2 weeks ago looking for photos from our first Christmas together. Instead, I found his last Christmas with her. Pictures from 4 years ago. Pictures of them decorating a tree together. Pictures labeled Our Last Christmas. Pictures he never told me existed. Then the messages, the fresh ones, the recent ones, the ones where he told her he missed her, where she told him she was glad he reached out again, where he said things he never said to me anymore, not because he didn't love me, but because he took me for granted. And I don't do well with being taken for granted. So, while the lights on our 9-foot Christmas tree glowed softly and the fireplace crackled like a holiday postcard, I sat on the sofa with a cup of peppermint tea and rehearsed what I wouldn't say when she walked in. "Are you nervous?" Evan asked from across the room, breaking my thoughts. I looked up. He was adjusting the collar of his sweater in the mirror, looking far too excited for a man about to host his ex in his marital home. "No," I said calmly. "Why would I be nervous?" He shrugged. "Because it might be, I don't know, weird. Weird is when your husband invites the woman he once nearly proposed to, and then acts like it's the same as inviting a coworker from accounting. But I didn't show any of that." "You sure you're okay with this?" he asked again. I smiled. I had been doing that a lot lately, smiling too much, and he never once stopped to wonder why. "I told you, it's fine." He nodded. Reassured by the wife he assumed would remain gentle, accommodating, endlessly understanding. He had no idea how deeply he'd underestimated me. The next morning I got up early and baked, not because I wanted to impress her, but because I knew she'd walk in trying to read me, trying to see if she still had power, presence, influence. I wasn't about to give her stale cookies and half-wrapped gifts. So, I made everything perfect. Cranberry, orange bread, ginger snap cookies, homemade cinnamon rolls. If she wanted to compare herself to me, she'd have a full table to measure against. Around noon, I heard Evan laughing on the phone in the office. Laughing. The kind of laugh he hadn't given me in months. A deep, familiar, nostalgic laugh. And that was when something snapped inside me, not in a dramatic way, but in the exact quiet way a woman breaks when she realizes she's become the background character in her own marriage. Later, he walked out smiling. "That was Sarah," he said casually. "She's really excited, is she now?" I asked. "Yeah," he continued, not even noticing the bitter edge forming in my voice. "She said she hopes you two can be friends." Friends. The word was so ridiculous I almost laughed. But then something in his face shifted. He hesitated, just for a second, like he realized he'd stepped somewhere dangerous but wasn't sure why. "You know," he said, "I think you two would really get along." "Oh, I'm sure we will," I said with an easy breath. "I'm sure we'll get along perfectly." He smiled again, oblivious. It was almost tragic, really, how little he knew about the storm he had already stepped into. That night, after Evan fell asleep, I slipped out of bed and sat quietly at the dining table. The Christmas lights reflected against the window, casting warm colors across the room that made everything look soft, deceptively soft. I opened the iPad. Again, not because I wanted to torture myself, but because I had learned something important. Men lie with confidence when they think they'll never be caught. And while scrolling through the messages, I found the one that changed everything. A message from her sent recently, not flirty, not romantic, but loaded. It read, "I can't wait to finally talk to her." "Talk to me? About what?" And then the next message. "I've kept your secret for long enough." My hands went cold. Secret? Secret from who? Secret from me. Then his reply, "At midnight, 2 weeks ago. Please don't ruin this. Let's just enjoy the holidays." My breath stopped. Ruin what? What were they sitting on? Together. What truth were they protecting? There was something much bigger here. Something my husband had hidden long before I found the messages. Something she knew. And suddenly, her being alone for Christmas felt like the least of my problems. Her coming to dinner wasn't random. Her wanting to talk to me wasn't innocent. She was bringing something with her. A truth, a confession, a secret that had sat between them for years. And Evan was absolutely terrified of it, which meant I was going to hear it, whether he liked it or not. I closed the iPad slowly and set it down. Then I whispered to myself with a calmness that wasn't calm at all, "Let Christmas come." Because now, I wasn't just waiting for her, I was waiting for the truth she carried like a ticking bomb. And tomorrow, she would walk into my house with the one secret my husband prayed would never reach me. But secrets don't stay buried in snow, not at Christmas. Not tonight, not anymore. Christmas Eve morning arrived with the kind of quiet that feels staged, like The world itself was holding its breath. Soft snow covered the front yard. The neighbors' lights blinked red and green. The coffee pot bubbled quietly in the kitchen. And in the middle of all that innocent holiday stillness, I felt the tension humming under my skin like electricity. Today, she was coming. Sarah. The woman whose name I had heard too many times. The woman from the photos I wasn't supposed to see. The woman who knew a secret my husband desperately didn't want me to know. I didn't know whether she was coming to hurt him or help me, but maybe both. But one thing was clear. She wasn't coming just for Christmas dinner. By 10 a.m., I had cleaned the house twice. Not out of nerves, but because busy hands keep a sharp mind from exploding. Evan came downstairs wearing a red flannel shirt like he was auditioning for some Hallmark Husband of Year special. You look festive, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. He grinned. First Christmas with a full house. Full house, right? I adjusted a garland on the banister as he walked past me into the kitchen. Do you think she need help bringing anything inside? He asked, opening the fridge. We'll manage, I answered, not bothering to look at him. You're sure you're good with this? He asked for the millionth time. I turned to him slowly. I'm sure. He exhaled with relief, completely missing the storm just beneath my tone. Because the thing about men like Evan is this: they don't hear what a woman says. They hear what they want her to mean. And he wanted me to mean, I'm fine. Nothing's wrong. I trust you. But what I actually meant was, I know everything. And I'm waiting. At 6:17 p.m., the doorbell rang. Evan practically jogged to answer it. I stayed in the dining room, smoothing the table runner as if the fabric could absorb my anger. You made it. Evan's voice boomed from the hallway. Then I heard her. A woman's soft laugh. Familiar. Too familiar. I turned, and there she was, Sarah. The infamous ex. She stepped into the dining room behind Evan, snow still dusting her dark hair, cheeks flushed from the cold. She wore a long cream coat, elegant, the kind of outfit chosen carefully not just for warmth, but for impression. Our eyes met. And for a moment, everything went silent. She wasn't smiling, not nervously, not politely, not with fake holiday cheer. She looked at me with an expression I couldn't immediately read, not hostile, not friendly, but weighted. Like she knew exactly why she was here, and exactly what tonight would unravel. Hi, she said softly. Hi, I replied, holding her gaze. Evan clapped his hands together. Great, okay, so food's almost ready. Drinks are in the kitchen. You to get to know each other. He laughed nervously and walked away, completely unaware that he had just left two women alone, who had more information between them than he could possibly imagine. Sarah took off her coat and draped it over the back of a chair. You've a beautiful home, she said. Thank you. She stepped closer, not intruding, not timid, just intentional. I'm really glad we're finally meeting, she added. Well, I said, keeping my face calm. You are my husband's ex. That alone makes this interesting. She let out a small breath, almost a laugh, but not quite. I know, and I'm not here to make anything uncomfortable. You being here does that automatically, I said, no hostility in my voice, just plain truth. Her shoulders relaxed slightly, as if she appreciated the honesty. I respect that, she murmured, but then her eyes flicked toward the hallway where Evan disappeared. A shadow crossed her expression. And suddenly the reason she was here began to feel much larger. Can I help you set the table? She asked gently. Sure, I said, handing her a stack of plates. We moved quietly for a few moments, placing silverware, adjusting napkins, creating the perfect holiday illusion. But at the very edge of my vision, I could feel her watching me, studying me, measuring something. And finally, she asked it. How long have you and Evan been married? 3 years, I said. She nodded slowly. I see, you knew that already, I said plainly. It was in his wedding announcement. She didn't flinch. Instead, she set down a plate with deliberate care. You're right, she said softly. I did. Another silence. Not awkward, heavy. Then she looked up with eyes that suddenly seemed sad. Can I tell you something? She asked quietly. I paused. Yes, she took a breath. I didn't come here for nostalgia or to make things weird, and I definitely didn't come because he invited me. I froze. What? I whispered. He said, I know what he told you, she interrupted gently, but I need you to hear the truth from me. My heartbeat thudded hard, each pulse loud in my ears. I asked to come, she said. I insisted. Why? My voice cracked, despite my attempt to stay composed. She looked down, then back up. Because there's something you deserve to know, she said quietly. Something he's kept from you for years. My mouth went dry. The secret, I whispered. She blinked, surprised that I knew a secret existed at all. He told you? She asked. No, I said slowly, but I found enough to realize something was going on. She hesitated, choosing her next words with surgical precision. It's worse than you think. I felt my knees weaken. My grip tightened on the edge of the table. What is it? I asked, barely getting the words out. Before she could answer, Evan walked back into the dining room, smiling like an idiot carrying a plate of appetizers. You two, getting along? He asked. Sarah straightened. Her face went neutral. Ice-calm. Double quotes. Yes, she said, perfectly. But when she looked at me again, her eyes told a very different story. A warning, a preparation. A promise. In that moment, I knew, whatever she was about to reveal, whatever truth she had carried into my home, whatever secret Evan had buried so deeply, it was about to change my life. And Christmas Eve dinner had only just begun. Dinner hadn't even started yet, but the atmosphere in the house felt like a stretched elastic band. One wrong pull, and everything would snap. The smells of roasted turkey, garlic, mashed potatoes, and rosemary bread floated through the air, mixing with the faint scent of pine from the Christmas tree. A normal home would feel warm, comforting, festive. But our home, it felt like a courtroom. And I was sitting across from the witness who held the truth my husband had spent years suffocating. Evan placed the tray of appetizers on the table, with a grin too wide to be real. All right, let's eat something before dinner, he said, rubbing his hands together. I watched him. The nervousness underneath his smile was subtle, but it was there. In the way he avoided eye contact with Sarah, in the way his jaw tightened when she reached for a napkin, in the way he laughed a little too loudly after every sentence. He was performing, trying to keep control, which meant he knew exactly how unstable this situation really was. Sarah sat beside me, hands folded neatly in her lap, her face neutral but her eyes moody, busy, thinking. I could practically hear the clock ticking in her mind, counting down to when she'd reveal the secret she promised. I leaned back in my chair, watching the two of them with quiet intensity. I'm so glad you came, Evan said to her, placing a mini quiche on her plate. She didn't touch it. Are you? She replied, no warmth in her tone. His movements faltered. Well, yeah, he said quickly. I mean, it's been a long time. It's good to reconnect. She tilted her head slightly. Reconnect? Is that what this is? Her voice didn't sound like a question, more like a challenge. Evan swallowed. Well, I thought. She cut him off gently. No, you didn't think, she said. You never think past the moment, Evan. You never have. My eyebrows lifted slightly. So this wasn't just an ex visiting for dinner. This was history resurfacing with teeth. Evan let out a shaky laugh, trying to brush it off. You always were dramatic, Sarah. She smiled. But that smile, it wasn't sweet, wasn't fond. It had an edge to it so sharp it could have sliced through glass. I wasn't dramatic, she said quietly. I was honest. Something you've always struggled with. His face fell. Mine sharpened. I cleared my throat, and both of them turned to me. Actually, I said calmly, I've been wanting to ask about something. Evan tensed immediately like I'd pointed a gun at him. He said, what's that? I kept my eyes on Sarah, never looking at him. Not yet. The two of you, I said slowly, when you were together. How serious were you? Evan opened his mouth, but Sarah answered first. We lived together for 3 years, she said plainly. We were engaged. My breath stopped. Engaged. The room tilted for a moment. Evan's face drained of color. Okay, well, technically, he stammered. No, Sarah said, her tone firm. Don't do that. Don't rewrite history. You proposed. I said yes. We were engaged. I stared at Evan. You told me you never proposed to anyone before me. His lips parted in panic. Baby, listen, I didn't tell you because it wasn't what? I snapped softly. Convenient. His eyes flicked toward Sarah, silently begging her not to say anything else. She ignored him. You didn't tell her because you thought it would make you look bad, she said plainly, and because you never want to be the villain in anyone's story. Evan shot her a glare. Stop. Her voice didn't rise, didn't crack. If you didn't want the truth coming out, she said, you shouldn't have invited me. I didn't invite you, he snapped. Silence. You could have heard a snowflake fall outside. I turned to him slowly. What? He swallowed hard. Too hard. Wasn't I mean? She asked first. Sarah leaned back, arms crossed. You begged me not to come, she said. Remember that part. You said, and I quote, please, don't show up here. My wife doesn't need to know everything. Evan's breath hitched. And for the first time in our entire marriage, he looked afraid of me. Okay, I whispered. Let's back up, but my voice wasn't soft anymore. It had steel in it. I looked at Sarah. You said you came because there's something I deserve to know. She nodded. Then tell me, I said. Evan nearly jumped out of his chair. No, let's just enjoy tonight, okay? This is Christmas Eve. I don't care what night it is, I said without raising my voice. I want the truth. Sarah inhaled slowly. Her eyes flicked to Evan one last time, giving him a silent chance to speak. He shook his head. She closed hers. Then she said, the words that shattered the room. He and I weren't just engaged. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. We didn't just date, she continued. We didn't just reconnect a month ago. She looked straight into my eyes. He's been in contact with me for years. My stomach flipped violently. Years. I whispered yes. I stared at Evan. He froze. Sarah continued. And that's not even the worst part. The worst part, my fingers went numb. What's worse than that? I whispered. She exhaled the truth in one devastating breath. He left me because I got pregnant. The room spun so fast I had to grip the edge of the table. Pregnant. The word echoed like a gunshot in my skull. I turned my head toward Evan slowly, barely able to see through the fog building in my vision. His face was paper white. Tell her, Sarah said, her voice low but steady. Tell her what you never had the courage to admit. Evan's lips trembled. I don't, Sarah, please. She didn't wait for him. She looked at me and delivered the final blow. He left because the baby wasn't his. My breath caught, but he thought it was. She paused. He still does. The room shattered. My mind went blank, and the ground beneath my life opened up like a crack in the earth. Because that meant there was more, so much more, and this was only the beginning. For a moment, I couldn't speak, couldn't blink, couldn't breathe. The room around me, our glowing Christmas lights, the decorated tree, the crackling fireplace blurred, until everything looked like a painting left out in the rain. All I heard was that one line echoing in my skull. He still thinks the baby was his. I stared at Evan. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring down at his hands like they were covered in something dark and dirty. Say something, I whispered, but he didn't. He couldn't. The silence pouring off him was louder than any explanation he could have given. I turned back to Sarah, who looked heartbreakingly steady, like she'd been rehearsing this moment for years. What do you mean he still thinks the baby was his? I asked, my voice barely making it out of my throat. She swallowed, then spoke quietly. I lost the baby, she said, a week after he walked out. Everything inside me twisted. Lost. The baby wasn't his. He thought it was. He left her, and he carried the guilt of that for years. And he never told you, she added softly, because he didn't want you to know who he really was. I felt my chest tighten, as if something was squeezing the air out of me. Evan finally spoke, barely a whisper. Please, stop. Sarah didn't. Do you want to tell her? She asked him. Or should I? He didn't answer, so she did. Evan and I broke up because we were already falling apart, she began, her voice steady. He was distant, moody, jealous. And when I thought I might be pregnant before I even knew the truth, he panicked. I blinked through the sting in my eyes. He accused me of cheating, she continued, threw things, screamed, said he'd never be trapped by anyone. My heart froze. Evan, I whispered in disbelief. He shut his eyes, shoulders stiff with shame. She went on. And when I told him, I wasn't sure if it was his because our relationship was already broken and I'd made a mistake. Walked out without even asking for a paternity test. My jaw tightened. So what happened? I asked. I found out the truth, she said. The baby wasn't his. And before I could tell him, I lost it. My hand covered my mouth, and he blamed himself for leaving. She said, every day since. Evan's voice cracked. Stop, Sarah, please. She looked at him with a mix of exhaustion and pity. He spiraled after that, and when he met you, he saw a chance to rewrite himself, a clean slate, a wife who had no idea who he'd been. I stared at Evan, my voice barely a whisper. Is that true? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. His silence was a confession. Then Sarah took a slow breath, like bracing herself for the part she'd been dreading most. There's more, she said quietly. My stomach dropped. More. I wasn't sure I could take more. What else? I whispered. She looked down, then back at me. When you two got engaged, he emailed me. My head snapped toward Evander, his face collapsed. No, he whispered. Please, Sarah, she continued. He wanted to know if the baby could have been his after all. He needed me to lie, to tell him it was possible just so he could forgive himself, so he could feel like he wasn't the monster he knew he had been. My chest ached so hard I felt dizzy. And I didn't lie, she said. I told him the truth, that it wasn't his. But he begged me not to ever tell you, he asked. I felt sick in my bones, sick in my soul. I stood up slowly, gripping the back of my chair. So let me get this straight, I said, voice trembling. You wanted her to lie to you, so you could feel like a better man when you proposed to me. He finally lifted his eyes, and the guilt in them was bottomless. I was scared, he whispered. I just wanted to move on with a clean conscience, I said, by sweeping the truth under a rug I didn't even know existed. I love you, he pleaded. I didn't want to lose you. I laughed, a bitter, broken sound I didn't recognize. You didn't want to lose me, I repeated. So you built our entire marriage on a lie. He stepped toward me. Baby, please listen. I stepped back. Don't, I warned. His hands dropped to his sides. I wasn't hiding another woman, he whispered. I wasn't cheating. I wasn't doing anything with her behind your back. I swear, that's not the issue. I snapped. He flinched. The issue, I said, voice cracking, is that you hid who you are, what you did, what you're capable of. You lied to me about your past. You lied to me about her. You lied to me about yourself. Sarah watched quietly, not enjoying any of this, just finally releasing something she'd held alone for too long. I didn't want her to carry this anymore, she said gently to me. You deserve to know who you married. Evan ran a shaking hand through his hair. I was trying to be a better man, he whispered. I am a better man. No, I said, voice low and sharp. You're just a man who hides the parts of himself he doesn't want me to see. He froze, completely, double quotes, and now, I added, I'm seeing them. Sarah stood. I'll go, she said softly. This conversation should be between the two of you now. I didn't stop her, but as she walked toward the front door, she paused and turned back. Just one thing, she said gently. I looked at her. He never stopped trying to forget what he did, she said, and people who try that hard to bury something always bury other things with it. A chill moved down my spine. Was she warning me, or preparing me? She wrapped her scarf around her neck, opened the door, and stepped out into the cold night. The moment the door closed, the entire house felt like it exhaled, leaving only me, Evan, and the truth hanging in the air like smoke. I looked at him. He looked at me, and then I said the sentence that changed everything. Tell me the rest. Because I knew from the look in his eyes there was a rest, and whatever he hadn't said yet was even worse. When I stepped back into the living room, the atmosphere had changed, not dramatically, no shouting, no thrown plates, but in that subtle, electric way a room feels right before a thunderstorm hits. Everyone was smiling, but it was the tight, polite, we're all pretending, too-normal kind of smiling. And right in the middle of it, my husband, John, standing with his hands in his pockets, rocking slightly on his heels, wearing the guilty expression of a kid who knows he's about to get in trouble the second the adults leave the room. He looked at me like he needed saving. I looked at him like he'd better start praying instead. Christina, his ex, sat on the couch like she owned the place, one leg crossed over the other, wine glass in hand, talking to my mother-in-law like they were lifelong friends. And my Mill, oh, she was glowing, smiling so hard I thought Botox might have snapped something. It hit me. I was the only one in that room who didn't know tonight was some twisted reunion tour, sweetheart. John said when he finally met my eyes. Why don't you come sit? We were just talking about when we all used to. Don't, I cut in. Just don't. You could have heard a pin drop. Christina's smile faltered for a millisecond, just enough to show she wasn't expecting that. But she quickly recovered. She sipped her wine like she was in a commercial. Oh, come on, she said lightly. No need to be tense. It's the holidays, double quotes, tense. Lady, you walked into my Christmas like it was a high school reunion nobody asked for. And you think I'm the tense one. But I didn't say that, because the woman I was earlier in the day might have swallowed her pride and tried to play nice. But the woman standing there now, she had receipts, recordings, and a plan that was about to unfold with all the elegance of a courtroom drama. I gave a slow smile, the kind that made both John and his mother shift in their seats. Oh, absolutely, I told her. No tension. I'm actually glad you're here. Christina stepped closer. She looked pleased like she thought I was finally accepting her presence. My mother-in-law beamed. See, I told you she'd come around. I said. I think Christmas is the perfect time for truth, don't you? John's shoulders stiffened because he knew I wasn't talking about warm, fuzzy Hallmark movie truth. I was talking about the truth he'd been hiding, the one I found because I don't snoop, I investigate, the one he said wasn't a big deal, the one he said was misinterpreted, the one he said didn't involve Christina. He was sweating now. Christina noticed. John, you okay? He forced a smile. I'm great. He wasn single quotes T, that he was seconds away from becoming the main character of a story he wouldn't survive socially. So, I sat down across from them, crossed my legs, folded my hands, and said sweetly, so, who wants to go first? Christina Jean, or should I? My mother-in-law frowned. Go first for what? For the truth, I said calmly. Since this dinner seems to be full of old memories, maybe we should talk about some newer ones. John's voice cracked. Babe, can I talk to you privately? No, I said in the same tone a judge uses when saying denied. We're a family, right? Everything on the table. Christina raised a brow, intrigued. Is this about me? Oh, absolutely. She leaned back slowly. Well, I'm listening. Good, because I was done being the respectful, polite, go on with it, wife, done. Being blindsided, done. Letting them treat me like I was lucky to sit at a table they didn't even set. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. It wasn't the dramatic slamming evidence on a table moment. It was quiet, controlled, surgical. John, I said without looking away from Christina, should we play the recording, or do you want to explain? My mother-in-law gasped, hand to chest. What recording? Christina straightened. Recording. John turned pale. You wouldn't. Oh, I would, I said softly. And I will. I pressed play. It was his voice. John's. Very clearly saying, she'll believe whatever I tell her. She always does. She trusts me too much. She doesn't need to know. Christina and I still talk. The room went dead silent. Absolutely silent. Christina's face froze. My mother-in-law looked like she'd swallowed her tongue. And John looked like he was about to disintegrate into a pile of regrets. I let the recording finish. Then I locked eyes with Christina. So, I said, now that we all know the truth, would you like to tell me why you're really here tonight? She opened her mouth, but for the first time since she walked in, she didn't have a rehearsed smile, or a comeback, or even a confident tilt to her chin. Just surprised. Then, a flicker of fear, because she realized something. I wasn't the wife who gets stepped on. I was the wife who steps back and lets the universe do the stomping. My mother-in-law finally spoke, voice trembling. John, you said you cut her off. Christina slowly turned toward him. You told me she was okay with it. He flinched. I leaned back, voice even. Don't worry, it gets better. Or worse, depending on whose side you were on. And at that moment, nobody was on John's. Not even Christina. I placed my phone on the table with 2 fingers, like a mic drop I didn't need to say out loud. Part 2 of the truth, I said calmly, starts at dinner. And then, just as the weight of my words settled over the room, ding-dong. The doorbell rang. Everyone looked at me. I smiled. I invited someone too. I said, and that's when everything truly started unraveling. When the doorbell rang, it echoed through the house like a warning bell. Not loud, not urgent, just inevitable. John turned toward the door slowly, almost mechanically, like a man walking toward his own sentencing. Christina shifted uncomfortably. My mother-in-law looked between all of us, searching for someone to explain what was happening, like she'd missed an entire season of the show. Meanwhile, I just sat there, calm, composed, patient. Because I knew exactly who was on the other side of that door, and I knew what would happen the second they stepped inside. Who is that? John asked, his voice rough. You'll see, I said. He swallowed hard, the kind of swallow a person does when their stomach drops into their shoes. My mother-in-law stood up. Don't tell me you invited more drama into this house. No, I said, rising from my seat. I invited truth. Christina muttered under her breath. This is ridiculous. I smiled at her. She glared back, her confidence wobbling for the first time tonight. The doorbell rang again. John hesitated. I didn't. I walked past him, ignoring the way he reached out lightly, like even touching me might burn him at this point. I opened the door, and there she stood, a woman in her early 30s, dark hair pulled back, wearing scrubs with a winter jacket over them, snowflakes melting on the shoulders, tired eyes, but determined, and holding a little boy by the hand, a little boy who looked well, very much like my husband. I stepped aside. "Come in," I told her. She nodded softly and entered, guiding the boy with her. He clutched a stuffed dinosaur, looking around the decorated living room with curiosity. Christina shot to her feet. My mother-in-law gasped so loudly, I thought she might faint right there on the carpet. John staggered backward, like he'd been punched. He stuttered. "What are you doing here?" My mother-in-law turned on him so fast, the air shifted. "You know her." I crossed my arms. "Oh, he knows her very well." Christina closed her eyes. This cannot be happening. But it was. It was happening in real time, under the glow of Christmas lights. With the world's most awkward silence, hanging like mistletoe, no one wanted to stand under. Hannah, calm as someone who'd rehearsed this 100 times, walked to the middle of the room. "Hello, John," she said. Her voice was steady in a way that made me respect her immediately. John swallowed. "You shouldn't have come here." "I didn't come for you," she said firmly. "I came because she," Hannah pointed gently at me, "deserves to know." Everyone turned toward me. I didn't say a word. I just nodded. Because yes, I deserved this truth. And no, I wasn't afraid of it. Christine's eyes darted between the child and John. "Please tell me, that's not it, is?" I said quietly. John covered his face with both hands. "Oh God." The little boy looked up at him, softly, confused, innocent. "Hi, Daddy." The room broke. My mother-in-law's jaw hung open, her oxygen disappearing. Christina took a full step back like she'd been hit with cold water. John just collapsed onto the edge of the couch as if gravity had finally caught up with all his lies. And me, I felt this strange calm settle in my chest, because this was the secret he tampered with my trust for. Not Christina, not texts, not emotional cheating, a whole entire child, a living, breathing, beautiful child he kept hidden like a skeleton in his closet. A child whose tiny face held all the truth he thought he could bury. I knelt down to the boy's level, softening my voice. "What's your name, sweetheart?" He smiled shyly. "Eli." "Hi, Eli," I said gently. "Do you like dinosaurs?" His little face lit up instantly. "Yes, this one's a tear." "It's very cool," I said. And for a moment, the entire room could see the difference between me and everyone else there. I wasn't angry at him. I wasn't even angry at Hannah. My anger had one target, one grown man who created this mess. Hannah cleared her throat. "I told him months ago, he needed to tell you," she said, "but he kept ignoring me. And then I found out he invited his ex to Christmas, and I realized you probably have no idea what kind of double life he's been living." Christina turned sharply. "You think I knew about this?" Hannah glanced at her. "Did you?" Christina's mouth snapped shut because the truth, she didn't know about Eli, but she did know about something I hadn't revealed yet. John groaned into his hands. "Please, all of you, just stop." "No," I said quietly. "You don't get to tell anyone to stop anymore." He looked up at me. And for the first time tonight, I think he realized he'd already lost me. My voice stayed calm, ice cold but strong. "You invited your ex to Christmas dinner. You lied about cutting her off. You hid that you were still talking to her, and you hid a child." I stepped closer, leveling him with a stare he couldn't run from. "This isn't a marriage problem anymore. This is a character problem." My mother-in-law choked out, "John, how could you?" He didn't answer, because he couldn't, because every lie he ever told had just grown legs. Walked into the room, and said, "Hi, Daddy." Christina sank into the couch, whispering, "I can't believe this." Hannah took Eli's hand. "I'll go," she said quietly. I just needed her to know the truth, but I stepped forward. "No, stay." Everyone stared at me. "You and Eli," I said, "are not the problem." "He is." John's eyes widened. "Are you trying to humiliate me?" "No," I said. "You handled that all by yourself." Silence, thick, hot, uncomfortable. And then I added, with a calm so sharp it cut the air, "We're not done, not even close." Because the truth, Eli was only the beginning. The real bomb, the one that would finish everything, was still in my pocket. And when I dropped it, not even Christmas lights would be bright enough to soften the fallout. The room felt smaller now, not physically, no, emotionally, like all the oxygen had been squeezed into a tight, little knot right in the center of the space, forcing everyone to inhale their mistakes and exhale their guilt. John sat hunched forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like the carpet could magically rewrite his life. Christina looked like she wished she could disappear. My mother-in-law looked like she was trying to calculate how many ways this could ruin her social reputation. And little Eli, he clutched his dinosaur and leaned into Hannah's side, glancing between all of us with the innocent eyes of a child who didn't understand he had just set fire to an entire family system. Hannah started quietly. I didn't come here to cause a scene. I came because he promised he would talk to you before the holidays. I told him you deserved to hear the truth from him, not from me. I nodded. I respect that. Christina scoffed softly. I still don't understand what any of this has to do with me. I turned calmly toward her. Oh, Christina, I said, you have everything to do with this. Her face tightened. My mother-in-law shot me a warning glare. Don't start with her. She's not the problem. I tilted my head. Isn't she? Christina straightened like she'd been jerked upright by invisible puppet strings. Okay, maybe John and I talked sometimes, but that doesn't mean talked. I repeated. She opened her mouth, stopped, isolated a second thought, then corrected herself. Nothing inappropriate happened. I smiled, but it wasn't kind. Good, I said lightly, because you'll want to stick with that story. She frowned. What is that supposed to mean? I reached into my purse and pulled out a small stack of printed papers. I didn't slam them down. I didn't wave them around. I simply held them, letting their weight speak for itself. John looked up and immediately blanched, white as snow on the sidewalk. Please, he said quietly, don't do this. You did this, I replied. What is that? Christina asked, her voice sharp. Hannah whispered under her breath. Oh, he's done. I placed the papers on the coffee table. Financial records, I said. Emails, hotel charges, transfers. Christina froze. My mother-in-law's jaw went slack. John whispered, I can explain. No, I said. You will listen. I picked up the first page and read it aloud. June 14th, $350 sent. From our joint account to Christina Mitchell. Christina's face drained. I didn't. Wait. Next page. July 2nd, hotel reservation under John Cooper. 2 guests. Charged to my credit card. My mother-in-law gasped. No, he wouldn't. I continued. August 9th, email confirmation to Christina. Booked the room, same place as last time. Christina's breath hitched. I swear, I didn't know he was using your money. Oh, I know, I said, cutting her off, because you thought he was single. John closed his eyes. He didn't deny it, because he couldn't. He'd lied to everyone. Christina stared at him, disgusted. You told me you and your wife were separated. No, my mother-in-law cried. Tell me you didn't say that. John didn't move. Christina backed away like he'd reached out with a snake. Oh my God, you swore to me you weren't living with her anymore. My voice dropped low. He was very much living with me, I said, sleeping next to me, eating meals I cooked, wearing a wedding ring, and apparently acting like a free agent on the side. Christina turned to me, horrified. Look, I'm not apologizing for you being angry. You should be, but I had no idea he was taking your money, or cheating with multiple people. My mother-in-law's head snapped toward her. Multiple. I nodded, picking up the final page, the one that mattered most. September 18th, I read, gift purchase, a necklace, engraved, not for me. My mother-in-law shook her head. No. I raised him better. I raised a brow. Did you? She fell silent. John rubbed his face. I swear, the money wasn't stopped. I said. And the room obeyed. I placed the final paper down. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a one-time accident. You've been running 2 relationships at the same time, maybe 3. Christina whispered. Hannah, was he? No, Hannah said flatly. We weren't romantic after we broke up, but he wasn't honest with you either. He lied to both of us. And he lied to me, I said. Most of all, John finally spoke, barely above a whisper. I didn't want to lose you. I laughed softly, not angrily, not loudly. Just sad. You already did, I said. He looked at me, desperate. We can fix this. We can talk. No, I said. There's something else you haven't told them. His eyes widened. Christina stilled. My mother-in-law crossed her arms. Hannah leaned in, curious. The truth was beginning to crack open like a fault line. I reached one last time into my purse, pulled out one last envelope. This one wasn't filled with receipts, or emails, or bank statements. This one held something far more explosive, something that made John whisper, please don't. I opened it, and I said 5 words that detonated the entire room. DNA test results came back. My mother-in-law clutched the arm of the sofa. Christina's mouth fell open. Hannah's eyes widened in fear. Dot and John looked like the earth had opened beneath him. Because the truth, Eli wasn't the only child he'd been hiding, and the second name on that test was going to burn every bridge left standing. The moment the words DNA test results came back left my mouth, the entire room seemed to inhale at the same time. Not breathe, inhale. A long, sharp, painful inhale, like everyone knew the air was about to turn toxic, but they couldn't stop themselves from taking it in. John stared at the envelope like it was a loaded weapon pointed at his chest, and in a way, it was Dot. My mother-in-law gripped the edge of the couch until her knuckles turned bone white. DNA test, she whispered. For who? Hannah pulled Eli closer, protective instinct kicking in immediately. Her eyes flicked between me and John, waiting, bracing, knowing her son's truth had already detonated one bomb in this living room. But Christina looked sick. She stared at John with a dawning horror that said she already suspected exactly what was about to come out of this envelope, because deep down, she knew he had lied to her about more than just his marriage. I held the envelope gently between my fingers. Calm, quiet, in control. John shook his head. You don't understand. Oh, I said softly. I understand perfectly. The problem is, no one else does. He stood suddenly. Please, don't do this here. Why not? I asked. You brought your ex to Christmas dinner. I invited the truth. He froze. I slowly pulled out the document, a single sheet, 2 columns, 2 names, dot, and 1 percentage. That would change everything. You got a DNA test, my mother-in-law croaked, her voice trembling like her entire identity as a parent was collapsing. Not for me, I said. I held the paper where everyone could see, but I didn't hand it to anyone. Not yet. I looked at John. When you went MIA 2 nights a week, when you worked late, when you took cash from ATMs instead of using cards, you weren't just hiding hotel rooms or cheating with Christina or playing single with Hannah. His jaw clenched. My mother-in-law whispered, No, please tell me no. I exhaled slowly. 2 months ago, I said, I got a message from a woman. She claimed she had a toddler she believed might be yours. Christina gasped. Hannah covered her mouth with her hand. Dot. My mother-in-law let out a strangled sound that didn't even resemble a word. Yes, I said. Another woman, another child, another lie. John stepped forward. It's not what you think. No. I tilted my head, because the DNA test says otherwise. I read from the paper. Probability of paternity, 99.998%. Christina stumbled back into the wall like she'd been shoved. Tana whispered, John, what have you done? But my mother-in-law didn't whisper. She shouted, You have another baby. Another. She pointed frantically at Hannah and Eli. You already hid this one. And now there's another. She collapsed onto the couch, shaking her head, muttering, This can't be happening. My son wouldn't. He can't be this. John ran a hand through his hair violently. I didn't know she'd contact you. I told her you told her what? I cut in. To lie. To disappear. To stay quiet so you could keep living your suburban family man life. He didn't answer, because we all knew the answer. I held up the paper. This is a DNA test confirming you fathered a toddler named Aurora. Christina's eyes went wide. Her name is, you already named. Oh my God. My voice stayed even. The woman reached out to me because she didn't want money. She didn't want drama. She just wanted her daughter to know who her father was. John sank to the floor. Actually sank, knees giving out. The sight would have been pitiful if pity was something I had left for him. Hannah, steadying Eli, spoke quietly but firmly. How many families did you build, John? How many women did you string along? How many children are going to grow up confused because you couldn't pick a direction? Silence. Heavy, thick, accusatory. I stepped closer, crouching so I could look him directly in the eyes. You kept an entire child hidden behind my back. You kept another woman hidden. You kept your ex in emotional orbit. You used my money to cheat. And when things got complicated, you lied to everyone and hoped all the timelines would never collide. Tears rolled down his cheeks, but I didn't soften. You didn't just break our marriage, I said. You broke reality. Hannah cleared her throat. If he's the father, she said softly, nodding toward the paper, then that baby is Eli's sister, and she deserves better than this. Christina shook her head. horrified. You told me you never had kids. You swore it. You said you wanted our future to be our own. John buried his face in his hands. I stood again, looking around the room. Some rooms get messy. Some get chaotic. This room was demolished. We aren't competing love interests, I said, my voice steady. We're not enemies. We are four women standing in the same wreckage left by one man's choices. Hannah nodded. Christina wiped a tear. My mother-in-law whispered, "How could you do this to your own family?" And I finally said the thing I had waited all night to say. John, you didn't just cheat on me. You didn't just betray me. You built a life out of lies. And tonight, every single lie came home for Christmas. He sobbed quietly, but I wasn't finished. I pulled out one last Itama manila folder. His head snapped up instantly. "What's that?" he whispered. I placed it on the table. "Divorce papers," I said. "Signed, filed, waiting for yours." My mother-in-law whispered, "Oh." Christina exhaled sharply. Hannah nodded in approval. But I stayed calm. "You made all these choices without me," I said. "So, this last decision, you don't get a say in it." I slid the folder forward with 2 fingers. "Merry Christmas, John." He broke completely. And the room stayed silent as the consequences finally caught up to him. But this story wasn't over, because what happened after Christmas dinner would be the part no one saw coming.
The rest of Christmas night didn't feel like a holiday. It felt like a courtroom. A quiet, emotionally exhausted courtroom where the judge had already slammed the gavel and the guilty party was left to sit with the consequences. After the divorce papers landed on the table, the energy in the house shifted into something surreal, almost dreamlike. John didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even look up. He sat curled forward, elbows on thighs, staring at the divorce papers like they were written in fire, the kind of fire that doesn't just burn the surface, it burns everything down to bone. My mother-in-law kept whispering, "How could he? How?" Like she was stuck in a glitch in her own parenting timeline. Christina didn't say anything else. No comeback, no defense, nothing. She stood quietly by the wall, arms crossed, staring at John like she was finally seeing the real man behind the versions he sold everyone, including her. And Hannah? Hannah was the only one who stayed grounded. She kneeled beside Eli, wiping a tear from his cheek, whispering something only he could hear. She wasn't angry. She wasn't emotional. She was focused on the only innocent person in the room. Eventually, she stood and looked at me. "I hope," she said softly, "you know none of this was your fault." I smiled faintly. "I do now." She nodded gently. "Then I'm glad I came." Before she left, she turned to John. "You're Eli's father. You can be in his life, but you're doing it the right way now. On paper, under rules, and without lies." John didn't answer. He just cried silently. Hannah took Eli's hand. When he waved goodbye to me, it broke me in a way I didn't expect. I kneeled down. "You take care of your mom, okay? She's strong, just like you." He nodded proudly. "I'm strong like a dinosaur." That made me smile. Stronger. Then they left. The door clicked shut, and silence fell again. Christina was the next to speak. "I swear to you," she said, looking me dead in the eye, "I had no idea he was still married. I thought you two were separated." I believed her, because her anger wasn't the anger of a guilty person. It was the fury of someone who realized she'd been played. "He told me he wasn't ready to go public because of his son," she added bitterly. "I didn't know he meant someone else's son." John winced. My mother-in-law covered her face. Then Christina looked at him. Sharp, clear, done. "You're sick," she whispered. "You played with my life too." She grabbed her coat and headed for the door, stopping only long enough to look back at me. "For what it's worth," she said, "you handled this better than most women would have." "Thank you," I said softly. She nodded once and left, which left only me, John, and his mother. My mother-in-law turned to me first. She swallowed hard. I am so sorry. I had no idea. None. I nodded. I know. She hesitated, walked toward me slowly. Then she surprised both of us by hugging me, tight, fierce, trembling. You didn't deserve this, she whispered. You were the best thing that ever happened to him, and he ruined it. It wasn't your job to fix him, I murmured. She pulled back, wiping tears. Just promise me something. What? Don't let this destroy your future. You are worth so much more than his mistakes. I nodded, because she was right. Then she turned to her son, and the softness vanished. What you did, she said, voice hard as steel, isn't just a mistake. It's a life pattern, a selfish, destructive pattern. And you hurt every woman in your life to protect your ego. He looked at her with broken eyes. Mom? No, she snapped. You don't get to speak. Sit in it. She grabbed her coat and walked out without another word. And he finally lifted his head. His eyes were red, swollen, full of shame. Please, he whispered, don't leave me. My voice stayed steady. You didn't leave me a marriage to stay in. I can change. I shook my head. You could have changed before you broke 3 families. Before you created children who will grow up with complicated stories because you couldn't tell the truth. He crumpled again. But I didn't. I'm not staying to save you, I said. I'm leaving to save myself. He reached out like he wanted to touch me. I stepped back. That hurt him more than anything else that night. Finally, I gathered my things, took a slow breath, and moved toward the door. I paused only once. When you sign those papers, do one thing right, I said. Show up for your kids, all of them, and stop making women pay for your lack of courage. He opened his mouth, closed it, and nodded, because he finally understood. There was no rescue coming, no second chance. No forgiveness wrapped in a bow under the tree. Christmas wasn't the day he lost his marriage. It was the day the truth came home. I left the house with my head high, and for the first time in months, I felt free. The divorce finalized, quick, clean, no fight, because he knew better. Hannah and I became friends. Our kids, they weren't siblings, but they deserved honesty and stability. She was a good mom, a strong one, and I respected her deeply. Christina rebuilt her life too, a better one, without lies dragging her down. John sees his kids now, all of them, not because he deserves praise, but because it's his responsibility. And me? I bought myself a small apartment, started therapy, got a promotion, took a solo trip to Boston, started smiling again, started living again, started becoming myself again. And one night, sitting on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker like they were cheering me on, I realized something. Sometimes you don't get the Christmas you planned. Sometimes you get the Christmas that sets you free. And mine gave me the one gift I needed more than anything, the truth and the courage to walk away from anything less.